So I'm definitely not going to be quoting from the Bible as much as he did. I don't have any scripture, no need for y'all to turn to your Bible. But the passage or the message tonight is rite of passage experience, so rope. I kind of put my own twist on it and put reality of presence experience. That's kind of my rope. So kind of what I'm going to be talking about is just truth, really. Everybody has their own concept of truth in their own lives. Which, from reading, I don't know if you guys heard of the author Brennan Manning, but I've been reading a book of his called Ruthless Trust, and he makes a funny point that says, trust is something us humans depend so much on, but it's something we literally can't even self-generate within us. It's a God-shaped hole in our heart that we have to rely on God for Him literally to be able to generate that trust in us. So kind of going back to my personal story, I was always raised in church most of my life, literally all my life. Pretty much a missions baby, being born in Brazil, moving here, moving back and forth. Always in the church life, but that never gave me a solid foundation ever with my relationship with God, which in opposite, it actually kind of messed me up a little bit mentally with kind of how I viewed God and just my relationship with Him. I think, and I wouldn't say it's the church fault, maybe a little bit of that, just a mixture of both, but just me growing up, constantly just thinking about my relationship with God being about, oh, what do I have to do to please Him more, or go to church every Sunday, almost as if it was like a checkbox in my head. So over time, as time went on, I was doing my thing, went through junior high, high school, kind of just going through the motions, thinking that I had this deep relationship with God, that I had some sort of purpose or truth that I was aiming towards. When in October of 2019, I kind of dated it, I thought that was funny how you kind of dated yours, because it shows significance that it's like a chapter in your life that you really feel the turning point of when you feel God truly meeting you in that season of where all my framework and everything that I did adapt as growing up, what I thought, going to church, reading my Bible, doing all these things, got me nowhere. And I was more depressed than all my atheist friends, and was like, okay, so is this it, God? Like, what's going on here? I thought I had it right. So yeah, it's just in that season, October, I remember it specifically, October of 2019, right before COVID hit. I was just second job fired in a row. I was at my lowest of lows, and I was like, completely confused about just my faith and everything, where my purpose was going and my meaning in life. And in that season, I felt something on my heart, a pull to just, there's more purpose, there's more meaning than everything I've put my own faith in, which was money and career before. I never really took seriously into consideration like the reality of God over my life. I was so just overly focused on making more money or getting a better job. But yeah, I guess God had to get me down to my lowest point, maybe kind of like you, just to where the reality of His presence was finally revealed to me when I let go of all of my check boxes about Him, and just my own things I created about Him. It was a different kind of truth that I experienced than the truth that I had been making myself about who He was. I think it was the literal truth of God, of who Jesus is. So I'm going to talk a little bit about exclusive truth, which is what I felt I experienced in that moment, was the real truth of God. Is there anybody in here who doesn't know what exclusive truth is? Exclusive. But I guess I'll explain it anyway. So exclusive truth is a truth, a statement of what we, outside of what we subjectively believe. So if I were to say, I truly believe 2 plus 2 equals 5, would that make me right? Just because I truly believe it within my subjective stance, does that mean 2 plus 2 is 5, or is it always equal 4? Is there an exclusive truth outside of what we believe? So can this exclusive truth be tied to our purpose and meaning over our lives, or is that something we subjectively create as well? The purpose and meaning. Well, we know Jesus calls us to love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. So is he right? Is that the ultimate purpose over our lives, or did we humans somehow find a better alternative to our truth? In every human, that's something they strive for, is truth or purpose. Whether you're an atheist, agnostic, Buddhist, Christian, whatever, every human ties truth and purpose behind their lives. So then the big question comes down to proof, obviously, right? You have to prove it to believe it. Well, I'd say that's wrong again. I say we all live our lives according to evidence, not to proof. I can't prove to you Cameron's not going to come up here and smack me in the face, but I think the evidence is that he's a good friend and he's really reliable. I'd hope you wouldn't do that. But
it's a great illustration.
Yeah, just simple.
But we don't know for sure.
But we don't know. So if anybody tells you, oh, you have to prove it to me in order for me to believe in it, that's probably just some other lie they've created why they don't want to put their faith in God, because every human generates faith. Here's another example. If you've been on a plane for 12 hours, 40,000 feet in the air, any human, be it Christian, atheist, agnostic, will generate the same amount of faith in a pilot that anybody else would. So I think there's a common distinction between the word faith. A lot of people look at faith as blindly believing in something. I look at it as the complete opposite. I think faith is what we generate based on the evidence that's been given to us. I think blindly believing in something is gullibility. So that's just kind of some misconceptions that I thought I'd maybe bring up that us Christians do face when we just talk to anybody about our faith or walking with God. But all these points I made about evidence and all that isn't any how I got closer to Jesus. These are just tools to help us intellectually. Another quote I read from Brennan Manning, it says, "Knowledge is felt, it arises from an experience of God and faith and love rather than human investigation." And I hold true to that for sure in my life. So what I've often learned is trust, sorry, I kind of skipped ahead a little bit. So me going through what I went through just in the season of suffering, God really did something to me in that season. I just laid my life down to Him like I never had before, in just complete surrender. And He showed up in the room. And the way I did it, everybody has a different pathway. Some people like to read into the Word. I hate reading personally. So what I just did was worship. That's all I knew how to do. That's all I felt I had the emotional capacity to do at the time. So that's what I did. I just put my AirPods in, found some songs that I could get into, and the reality of it, I never felt anything more powerful, a love more powerful than I did in my room in those moments at midnight, 2 a.m, just by myself. Where God's just sitting there breaking you down and you finding out who it is that God really made you to be, and the true identity of who you are, and not of everything I was going through past before my life, creating all these lies of putting my identity in money or my career, or putting my identity in my friends around me that were leading me into bad things. God really just all in that moment, that season right there of me completely being surrendered because of my suffering, He flipped it a 180 and completely changed my trust and my trajectory of where I put my trust. So what I've learned is trust often begins on the far side of despair, when all human resources are exhausted, when craving for reassurance is stifled, when we forego control, when we cease trying to manipulate God and demystify mystery. Then at our wits' end, trust happens within us. An unattained cry, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit," surges from the heart, where anyone's true purpose is, right in the hands of Jesus, waiting for you to desperately cry for him, because Jesus' rite of passage for you isn't in your good behavior or deeds for him, it's in his presence experience. Amen. So how can one come to trust in Jesus? Well, from what I've learned, I know for certain our trust grows as we shift from making self-conscious efforts to be good to allowing ourselves to be loved as we are, not as we should be. Yeah. The Holy Spirit moves from us from the head to the heart, from intellectual cognition to experimental awareness. An inward stillness pervades our being, and at the time of prayer is characterized less by rational reflection and speaking, and more contemplative quietly and listening. Self-absorption fades into self-forgetfulness as we fix our gaze on the brightness of the Lord. So thank God he decided to come on earth as a man and freely choose to suffer because of his love for us. Because it's God, he obviously didn't have to come down here and suffer for us. He could have snapped his fingers and broke everyone, which is still one of my greatest mysteries to me, is how God had so much wisdom to come down here as a man and experience life as a man, but yet hold all that power that he had in him to let humans treat him the way that they did. And that to me is one of the biggest questions that I'll never be able to wrap in my head, how he did it, obviously because it's God, but what a glory that we get to have a suffering God. Because in my opinion, if you think you're at your lowest or too far because you're suffering, I think it's the complete opposite. I think you're in your greatest season of delivering if you think you're in your greatest season of suffering. So yeah, that's
good
message.
Awesome.